The massive ship moved through space like a living nightmare. It was the size of a small moon, its black surface covered with strange patterns that pulsed with red light. The ship looked like it was alive, breathing slowly as it traveled between the stars. This was the Eternal Hunger flagship of the Velkari Dominion, and it had just finished destroying another world. Overlord Zethran stood on the command bridge, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the control panels. He was not fully organic anymore. Half of his body was machine, with metal plates covering his skin and glowing cables running under his flesh. His eyes were no longer the eyes he was born with. They were replaced with red sensors that could see across many different types of light. When he breathed, steam came from vents in his chest. The bridge around him was vast and dark. Hundreds of other Velkari worked at their stations, each one a mixture of flesh and machine like their commander. Some had metal arms that moved with perfect precision. Others had computer screens built directly into their skulls. They all shared the same red glow in their eyes, the mark of their species' evolution beyond pure biology. "Report," Zethran sighed, his voice carrying the sound of metal grinding against metal. "The harvest of System 779 is complete, Overlord," replied his second-in-command, a female Velkari whose entire lower body had been replaced with a spider-like machine. 3 billion organic units processed. All useful minerals extracted. The star will be drained within 2 cycles. Zethran nodded, another system consumed. Another set of worlds stripped of everything valuable. The process had become so routine that he barely felt satisfaction anymore. Once, long ago, conquest had been exciting. There had been challenges, enemies who fought back with clever tactics or unexpected weapons. But that was thousands of years ago, back when the Velkari had only conquered a few galaxies. Now they had taken 17 entire galaxies. 17 collections of billions of stars, each with their own planets and species. All of them had fallen to the Velkari fleet. Some had surrendered immediately when they saw the massive ships arriving. Others had fought to the last breath. It made no difference. The result was always the same. "How long since we encountered resistance worth remembering?" Zethran asked, more to himself than to his crew. "Approximately 47 standard years." "Overlord," answered the navigation officer without hesitation. "The crystalline entities of the Zarian cluster managed to destroy 12 of our harvester ships before we adapted. 47 years. Less than a heartbeat in Velkari terms. Their species lived for thousands of years, and their empire had existed for over 1,000,000. 47 years since anything had even slowed them down." The thought should have made Zethran proud, but instead it made him restless. The truth was that conquest had become boring. When every enemy fell within hours, when every world could be stripped clean without effort, where was the challenge? Where was the glory? The Velkari had become so powerful that they were like adults fighting children. There was no honor in such easy victories. On the main screen, the last planet of System 779 was being consumed. Massive tubes extended from Velkari harvester ships, drilling deep into the planet's core. The world's surface cracked and broke apart as everything useful was sucked up into the waiting ships. Oceans boiled away. Mountains crumbled to dust. In 6 hours there would be nothing left but empty space and the distant star, which would also be drained of its energy soon enough. Zethran had watched this process thousands of times. He had personally overseen the destruction of entire civilizations. Species that had taken millions of years to evolve were erased in a single day. Their art, their culture, their dreams and hopes all turned to raw materials for the Velkari war machine. "Any signs of evacuation ships?" he asked. "Negative, Overlord." The population appeared to have no faster-than-light travel. They were trapped on their worlds when we arrived. Another species that never had a chance. They probably spent their final hours looking up at the sky, watching the massive Velkari ships blot out their sun, knowing that death was coming but unable to do anything about it. Some might have prayed to their gods. Others might have tried to hide. A few might have attempted to fight with whatever primitive weapons they possessed. None of it would have mattered. This was how the Valkyrie had conquered 17 galaxies. They moved like a wave of destruction, consuming everything in their path. Their technology was so advanced compared to most species that the conflicts were not really wars. They were more like natural disasters you could not negotiate with. A hurricane. You could not reason with an earthquake. The Valkyrie came, they took what they wanted, and they moved on. Set course for the next target, Zethrin commanded. Overlord, the fleet admirals are requesting new hunting grounds. The current spiral. Arm will be completely harvested within 50 cycles. Should we begin preparations to move to the next galaxy? Zethrin considered this. Moving to a new galaxy was a major operation. It required months of preparation and the coordination of millions of ships. But it also meant the possibility of finding something new, something that might provide a challenge. Not yet, he decided. There are still several sectors in this galaxy that our scouts have not fully explored. We will complete the harvest here before moving on. As you command, Overlord. The bridge fell quiet except for the soft humming of machines and the occasional report from various stations. Zethrin walked to the observation deck, a massive window that looked out into space. The Eternal Hunger was surrounded by thousands of other ships, all of them part of his personal fleet. Each ship was a work of art and terror, designed to inspire fear in enemies and to efficiently destroy worlds. Some of the ships looked like giant insects with long, sharp legs that could tear apart space stations. Others resembled sea creatures from the deep ocean, all flowing curves and hidden weapons. A few were built like geometric shapes that hurt to look at, their angles designed according to mathematical principles that most organic minds could not understand. All of them shared the same black color and red lighting that marked them as Valkyrie vessels. All of them carried crews of enhanced warriors who had given up much of their original biology in exchange for superior capabilities. And all of them were part of the largest and most successful military force in known history. Zethrin's personal fleet contained over 2 million ships. But this was just a small part of the total Valkyrie armada. Across 17 galaxies, there were billions of Valkyrie vessels engaged in the endless work of conquest and harvest. The numbers were so large that even Zethrin had trouble understanding the true scope of his empire's power. A junior officer approached, walking with the careful steps of someone who knew that disturbing the Overlord could be dangerous. Overlord, we have received reports from the Deep Scouts. Speak. They have detected unusual activity in a previously unexplored region, a small galaxy on the outer edge of our territory. The energy signatures suggest rapid technological development. This was slightly interesting. Most species develop slowly over thousands or millions of years. Rapid development usually meant that a civilization was being influenced by outside forces, possibly the remnants of a more advanced species that had escaped Valkyrie attention. How rapid? Zethrin asked. The scouts estimate that the inhabitants have progressed from primitive radio communications to faster-than-light travel in less than 100 of their local years. Now, this was very interesting. Such rapid advancement was almost impossible without external help. Perhaps some species from a previously conquered galaxy had escaped to this region and was sharing their technology. Or perhaps there was some kind of ancient artifact providing knowledge to the local inhabitants. What is the designation of this galaxy? The scouts have designated it as Target Galaxy 77 Alpha. It appears to be a standard spiral formation with approximately 400 billion stars. Initial estimates suggest a moderate population of various species, most of them at relatively low technological levels. 400 billion stars. Even by Valkyrie standards, that was a significant prize. And if there was some source of advanced technology hidden there, it could provide the first real challenge Zethrin had faced in decades. Prepare a conquest fleet, he ordered. Standard formation. 50,000 ships should be sufficient for a galaxy of that size. At once, Overlord. As the officer hurried away to carry out his orders, Zethrin felt something he had not experienced in a long time: anticipation. perhaps. This small galaxy would provide something more interesting than the usual routine of helpless worlds and fleeing populations. Perhaps there would be a real fight. He had no way of knowing that in that distant spiral galaxy, on a small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star, the inhabitants had been watching the Valkyrie Empire for decades. They had studied every conquest, analyzed every battle, and prepared for the day when the great destroyers would finally turn their attention toward the Milky Way. The humans were ready. 3 weeks after the decision was made, the Valkyrie conquest fleet assembled at the edge of their territory. 50,000 ships gathered in the dark space between galaxies, their black hulls barely visible against the star-filled void. Each ship was a masterpiece of destruction, built over centuries by the greatest engineers in 17 galaxies. Together, they formed a force that could destroy entire star systems in a matter of hours. Overlord Zethran stood on the bridge of the Eternal Hunger, watching his fleet prepare for departure. Supply ships moved between the larger vessels like insects around giants, delivering ammunition, fuel, and fresh crews. The sight should have filled him with pride, but instead he felt only the familiar emptiness of routine. "Fleet status report," he commanded. "All vessels report ready for immediate departure, Overlord," his second-in-command replied. "Scouts have transmitted the exact coordinates of target Galaxy 77 Alpha. Estimated travel time at maximum speed is 14 standard days. 14 days to cross the void between galaxies." Once that journey would have been considered impossible, but Valkyrie technology had made it routine. Their ships could fold space around themselves, cutting through dimensions that most species could not even detect. They moved through the universe, like sharks through water, swift and deadly. "Begin the advance," Zethran ordered. The fleet moved as one. 50,000 ships activated their drives simultaneously, creating a ripple in space that could be detected from thousands of light years away. They accelerated quickly, leaving their home galaxy behind and entering the empty darkness between star systems as they traveled. Zethran reviewed the scout reports about their destination. Target Galaxy 77 Alpha was smaller than most of the galaxies they had conquered. It contained roughly 400 billion stars arranged in a spiral pattern. The energy readings suggested it was relatively young, with many active star-forming regions and a high percentage of metal-rich worlds. What made it interesting was the unusual technological development pattern the scouts had detected. Most civilizations develop slowly and predictably. They would discover fire, then agriculture, then basic tools, then more complex machines, and eventually space travel. The process usually took millions of years and followed well-understood patterns, but this galaxy was different. The scouts had detected rapid jumps in technology that seemed to skip entire developmental stages. Radio signals had appeared suddenly, followed within decades by nuclear weapons, computers, and space travel. Some species seemed to advance centuries' worth of progress in just a few years. "Communications officer?" Zethran called. Double quotes. "Yes, Overlord?" "What is the current status of the anomalous signals from the target galaxy?" The officer consulted his instruments, mechanical tentacles dancing over control panels built into his modified skull. "The signals continue to increase in complexity and power, Overlord. We are now detecting what appears to be faster-than-light communications between multiple star systems. The inhabitants have established some form of interstellar network." This was unusual. Most species took thousands of years to establish reliable communication between star systems. The fact that multiple civilizations in this galaxy had achieved it suggested either outside interference or some kind of shared knowledge base. Any indication of who might be responsible for accelerating their development? "Unknown, Overlord. The signal patterns do not match any known Valkyrie database entries. However, analysis suggests the communications are highly organized and coordinated. This is not random technological advancement. Someone or something is deliberately guiding these species." Zethran felt a small spark of interest. Perhaps there was a surviving remnant from one of their previous conquests, hiding in this distant galaxy and sharing advanced knowledge with the local populations. If so, it would need to be located and eliminated. The Valkyrie did not tolerate survivors who might spread information about their weaknesses or tactics. Tactical assessment, he requested. Based on observed technology levels, standard conquest. Protocols should be sufficient, the tactical officer reported. Even with accelerated development, the inhabitants appear to be confined to single star systems. No evidence of large-scale fleet construction or advanced weapons. Estimated resistance. Time before complete capitulation, 6 to 12 hours. 6 to 12 hours. Even with their unusual technological advancement, the inhabitants of this galaxy would last less than half a day once the Valkyrie arrived. It was disappointing but not surprising. Raw technological knowledge was not enough to stand against. 1,000,000 years of military experience and superior numbers. The fleet continued its journey through the void, maintaining perfect formation despite the vast distances involved. Valkyrie ships were connected by quantum communication links that allowed instant coordination across light years. Each captain knew exactly where every other ship was located, and what their assigned targets would be once they reached the enemy. As they traveled, Zethrin began planning the conquest strategy. The galaxy appeared to have several major civilizations spread across different regions. The logical approach would be to strike the most advanced worlds first, eliminating any potential coordination between species. Then the fleet would spread out and systematically harvest each star system, working from the outside in. Overlord, the communications officer interrupted his thoughts. We are receiving new data from the advanced scouts. Report. The technological advancement in the target galaxy has accelerated further. We are now detecting energy signatures. Consistent with advanced manufacturing, large-scale space construction, and what appears to be military preparation. Military preparation. That was more interesting. Most species only began serious military development after they detected the Valkyrie fleet approaching. The fact that these civilizations were already preparing suggested they somehow knew what was coming. Clarify military preparation, Zethrin ordered. Multiple species appear to be constructing defensive installations around their homeworlds. We are also detecting the movement of large objects in space, possibly warships or evacuation vessels. Signal traffic between star systems has increased by over 3,000% in the past week. 3,000%. That level of communication suggested either panic or very detailed coordination. Neither option was particularly concerning from a military standpoint, but it did indicate that these species were more organized than usual. Any signs that they have detected our fleet? Negative, Overlord. We are still several days out and maintaining full stealth protocols. However, the timing of their military preparations suggests they may have advance warning through other means. Advance warning was possible if there were indeed survivors from previous conquests hiding in this galaxy. Such survivors might have knowledge of Valkyrie expansion patterns and could predict when an attack would come. If so, they would need to be hunted down and eliminated to prevent future interference. The days passed quickly as the fleet continued its approach. Each day brought new reports of increased activity in the target galaxy. The inhabitants were clearly preparing for something, though their preparations seemed almost pathetically inadequate compared to what was coming. On the 10th day of travel, the scouts transmitted a detailed tactical map of the galaxy. The largest concentration of advanced civilizations was located in what appeared to be a relatively small spiral arm near the galaxy's edge. This region showed the highest levels of technological activity and seemed to be the center of the military preparations. Focus our initial attack on this region, Zethrin decided, indicating the area on the tactical display. If there are survivors directing the local species, they will most likely be located where the most advanced technology is. Concentrated. Understood, Overlord. Shall we prepare for standard siege protocols? No, Zethrin said after a moment of consideration. I want to see what they have prepared for us. Begin with a probe attack. Send the first wave to test their defenses before committing the main fleet. This was slightly unusual. Normally, the Valkyrie simply overwhelmed enemy defenses with massive force from the beginning. But something about this situation made Zethrin cautious. The rapid technological development, the coordinated military preparations, and the precise timing all suggested that these species knew more than they should about what was coming. Probe force composition, Overlord, 5,000 ships. Mixed types, standard combat configuration. Have them approach the outer systems of the target region and engage any defensive forces they encounter. I want detailed reports on enemy capabilities, tactics, and technology levels. At once, Overlord. As the orders were transmitted throughout the fleet, Zethrin felt the familiar anticipation that came before battle. Perhaps this conquest would be more interesting than he had initially expected. Perhaps these species would provide a few moments of actual resistance before the inevitable crushing defeat. On the 12th day, the fleet reached the edge of the target galaxy. The spiral of stars stretched out before them, beautiful and doomed. Somewhere among those countless suns were billions of living beings who had no idea that their civilization was about to end. They were probably going about their daily lives, working and playing and dreaming of the future, unaware that death was approaching from the darkness between galaxies. Long-range sensors detect multiple artificial structures throughout the galaxy, the sensor officer reported, confirming presence of at least 47 distinct technological civilizations. Several appeared to have achieved interstellar travel capability. 47 civilizations. It was a rich galaxy, full of life and diversity that would soon be reduced to raw materials and energy. Zethrin had seen this pattern thousands of times before. Each galaxy they conquered had its own unique species, its own cultures and achievements. All of them eventually became fuel for the Valkyrie war machine. "Deploy the probe force," he commanded. "Begin approach to the outer systems of the primary target region." The 5,000 ships of the probe force separated from the main fleet and began moving toward their assigned targets. They moved quickly but carefully, using their advanced sensors to map the defenses they encountered. What they found was puzzling. "Overlord, the probe force is reporting unusual readings from the target systems," the communications officer announced. "There appear to be significantly fewer defensive installations than expected based on the energy signatures we detected during approach." "Explain." "The probe commanders report that many star systems appear to be empty, Overlord. They are detecting the remains of recent industrial activity, but most of the mobile assets seem to have been moved elsewhere." Moved elsewhere. That suggested evacuation or repositioning of forces. Most species tried one of two strategies when facing Valkyrie invasion. They either scattered their population to hide among the stars, or they concentrated their forces for a desperate last stand. Both approaches were ultimately futile, but they sometimes provided interesting tactical challenges. "Any signs of massed enemy fleets?" "Negative, Overlord. The probe force has not encountered any significant military resistance, however." "Continue." "Sir, they are reporting something strange. The outer system of the primary target region appears to contain a single vessel waiting in deep space. It is small, Overlord, perhaps 1 kilometer in length. But it is broadcasting signals on multiple frequencies. A single ship, one small vessel, alone in the vastness of space, waiting for the arrival of 5,000 Valkyrie warships. It was either an act of incredible bravery or unimaginable stupidity. What kind of signals?" "Overlord, the ship appears to be broadcasting in our language, perfect Valkyrie linguistic patterns. They are requesting communication with Fleet Command." Zethrin stared at the main display in shock. No species had ever learned Valkyrie language before first contact. Their linguistic patterns were incredibly complex, incorporating mathematical concepts and dimensional references that most organic minds could not comprehend. The fact that these unknown beings could speak proper Valkyrie was impossible, unless they had been taught by someone who already knew the language. "Open a channel," Zethrin ordered. "I want to speak with whoever is commanding that vessel." As the communications system activated, Zethrin realized that this conquest might be more interesting than he had anticipated. For the first time in decades, he was facing something truly unexpected. In the distance, alone in the cold vacuum of space, a small human warship waited patiently for the conversation that would change the course of galactic history. The communication channel opened with a soft chime that echoed across the bridge of the eternal hunger. For a moment, there was only silence and the background static of deep space. Then a voice spoke, clear and precise, using perfect Valkyrie language patterns. Greetings, Overlord Zethran of the Valkyrie Dominion. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Defiance. We have been expecting you. The bridge fell completely silent. Every Valkyrie officer stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at the main communication display. In over 1 million years of conquest, no species had ever greeted them by name. No one had ever been expecting them. And certainly no one had ever learned to speak their language without years of study and biological modification. Zethran felt something he had not experienced in centuries: genuine surprise. His red sensor eyes focused on the display, which showed only the small human ship floating alone in the darkness. The vessel was tiny compared to any Valkyrie warship, barely large enough to house a crew of a few hundred beings. It looked fragile and primitive, like a metal toy floating in an ocean. "You know my name," Zethran said slowly, his mechanically enhanced voice carrying clearly across the void. "Explain how this is possible." "We know many things about you, Overlord," the human voice replied calmly. "We know that you command the largest conquest fleet in Valkyrie history. We know that you have personally overseen the destruction of over 2,000 civilized worlds. We know that your ship, the Eternal Hunger, is 1,400,000 years old and has never been defeated in battle." The silence on the bridge deepened. These facts were not widely known even within the Valkyrie Empire. Ship ages were classified military information. Personal conquest records were kept in secure databases. The idea that these unknown humans had access to such detailed intelligence was deeply disturbing. "We also know," the human continued, "that you are currently leading a fleet of exactly 50,000 ships toward our galaxy. Believing this will be another routine harvest operation. We know that you sent a probe force of 5,000 ships ahead to test our defenses. And we know that you have never encountered meaningful resistance in over 47 years. Zethran's mechanical hands clenched involuntarily. Every piece of information the human had mentioned was absolutely correct, but it was impossible for them to know these things. The Valkyrie maintained strict communication security. Their quantum channels were unbreakable. No species had ever successfully infiltrated their command networks. "How?" he demanded. "We have been watching you for a very long time, Overlord. We have studied your methods, analyzed your technology, and learned your weaknesses. We know exactly how you operate and why you have been so successful for so long." "Impossible. No species has the capability to observe Valkyrie operations without detection." "You are correct," Captain Chun replied. "No single species has that capability, but we are not acting alone." On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing. Ships were decloaking throughout the outer system, revealing themselves one by one, but these were not human vessels. The ships that materialized came in dozens of different designs, representing technologies and aesthetics from across the galaxy. Some were crystalline structures that sparkled like jewels against the stars. Others were smooth, flowing shapes that seemed to bend light around them. A few appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Each design was completely different, representing a unique evolutionary path and technological approach. "What you see before you," Captain Chun explained, "is the Galactic Resistance Coalition. Representatives from every species that has escaped Valkyrie conquest over the past 300 years. Survivors who have spent decades preparing for this moment." Zethran stared at the display in growing alarm. Hundreds of ships were now visible, and more were appearing every second. Each one represented a civilization that should have been completely destroyed. The Valkyrie were thorough in their conquests. They hunted down evacuation fleets and eliminated refugee populations. The idea that so many survivors had not only escaped but managed to organize themselves was unthinkable. Survivors do not pose a threat to the Valkyrie Dominion, Zethran stated, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. You may have gathered a collection of refugee vessels, but you cannot stand against our superior numbers and technology. You are partially correct, the human admitted. Individually, none of our species could challenge your empire. But we have had a very long time to prepare. We have shared our knowledge, combined our technologies, and developed new approaches specifically designed to counter your advantages. Demonstrate, Zethran commanded, curious despite himself. Very well, the tactical display suddenly exploded. With new information, every Valkyrie ship in the probe force was now clearly visible on the human sensors, despite the fact that they were using full stealth protocols. Not only were they visible, but detailed technical readouts were appearing next to each vessel, showing power levels, weapon configurations, and structural weak points. How are you penetrating our stealth systems? Zethran demanded. The Kythera taught us how to detect your quantum signatures, Captain Chun replied matter-of-factly. They are the crystalline beings from the Zarian cluster, the ones you conquered 47 years ago. Some of them escaped and have spent decades studying the sensor data from their final battle. They learned to track your ships through dimensional space. The Kythera, Zethran remembered them well. They had been the last species to cause significant damage to a Valkyrie fleet before today. Their crystal-based technology had been impressive, if ultimately inadequate. The idea that survivors had been studying that battle and developing countermeasures was deeply concerning. The Nexari provided us with information about your communication protocols, the human continued. The Veltar shared details about your weapon systems. The Zephyrians taught us about your ship construction methods. Each survivor species contributed something unique to our understanding of your capabilities. With each name mentioned, Zethran felt his confidence eroding further. These were all civilizations he remembered conquering personally, worlds he had watched burn, populations he had seen harvested. The fact that so many had escaped and were now working together represented a massive intelligence failure. Even with stolen knowledge, you lacked the industrial capacity to threaten our empire, he insisted. That would normally be true, Captain Chain agreed. But we have had an unexpected advantage. You see, Overlord, one of the species you conquered possessed something very special. Something that has allowed us to prepare on a scale you never imagined possible. Explain. The architects of Kepler 442, do you remember them? You conquered their system 112 years ago. They were master builders who could construct massive structures in space using nothing but raw stellar energy and basic materials. You harvested their worlds and thought you had eliminated them completely. Zethran did remember. The architects had been remarkable engineers, capable of building planet-sized structures in a matter of months. Their technology would have been valuable if it could have been captured intact, but they had destroyed most of their installations rather than allow them to fall into Valkyrie hands. Some of them escaped, Captain Chung continued. They have spent over a century building hidden bases throughout this galaxy. Massive construction facilities powered by entire stars hidden in places you would never think to look. They have been preparing for your arrival for decades. As if to demonstrate this point, the long-range sensors began detecting new signatures throughout the galaxy. Massive structures were powering up, revealing themselves for the first time. Space stations the size of moons. Shipyards that could construct fleets in a matter of days. Weapons platforms that drew their energy directly from nearby stars. This is impossible, Zethran whispered. Is it? Captain Chun asked. You have conquered 17 galaxies, Overlord? That means you have displaced the populations of trillions of worlds. Did you really think that all of them died? Did you never consider that some might escape, regroup, and plan their revenge? The truth was that Zethran had never seriously considered such a possibility. The Valkyrie were so overwhelmingly powerful that the idea of scattered survivors posing a real threat had never occurred to him. Individuals might escape, small groups might flee to distant systems, but organizing an effective resistance seemed impossible. "You have shown me survivors and hidden bases," he said, trying to regain his composure. "But you are still vastly outnumbered. My fleet alone contains 50,000 ships. The total Valkyrie armada numbers in the billions. Even if you have built new vessels, you cannot match our numerical superiority." "You are correct about our numbers," Captain Chun admitted. "We have perhaps 10,000 ships ready for immediate combat. Against your 50,000, those odds would normally be hopeless. Then you understand the futility of resistance." "No, Overlord. What I understand is the importance of choosing your battles carefully. You see, we do not intend to fight your fleet ship to ship. We intend to fight you in a way that nullifies your numerical advantage. There is no tactic that can overcome such disparity in force, isn't there? Tell me, Overlord, what happens to your fleet if you cannot communicate with your ships? What happens if you cannot coordinate your attacks? What happens if you cannot tell friend from foe?" Before Zethrin could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. The communications officer turned to him with panic in his enhanced eyes. "Overlord, we are losing contact with the probe force. All quantum communication links are being disrupted. We cannot reach any of our forward units. Impossible. Valkyrie quantum communications cannot be jammed. The jamming is not affecting our quantum channels directly," the officer explained rapidly. "Something is interfering with the dimensional matrices that anchor our communication network. The channels exist, but they are ... confused. Messages are being routed to random destinations." On the tactical display, the neat formation of the probe force began to break apart. Ships that should have been maintaining perfect coordination started drifting out of position. Some began turning toward their own allies, apparently receiving contradictory orders. Others simply stopped moving, their crews unable to communicate with each other or with Fleet Command. "The Veltar were communications specialists before you conquered them," Captain Chun explained calmly. "They spent 60 years studying the quantum communication breakdown that occurred during their final battle. They learned how to turn your own coordination systems against you." Zethrin watched in horror as his probe force descended into chaos. Ships were colliding with each other as their navigation systems received conflicting data. Some vessels were firing warning shots at their own allies, apparently believing they were under attack. The perfectly organized military formation was becoming a confused mass of metal drifting aimlessly through space. "This is only a demonstration," Captain Chun continued. "We wanted you to understand what you are facing before we begin serious negotiations." "Negotiations?" Zethrin struggled to process what he was seeing. "The Valkyrie do not negotiate. We conquer. That may have been true in the past, Overlord. But today, you are going to learn something new. Today, you are going to discover what it feels like to be the smaller force facing impossible odds. Today, you are going to understand what every species you have conquered felt when they saw your ships approaching." The probe force was now completely out of control. Several ships had collided and were drifting as debris. Others were firing randomly into space, their crews apparently unable to distinguish between enemy vessels and empty void. The mighty Valkyrie war machine, which had conquered 17 galaxies with perfect precision, had been reduced to a chaotic mob in a matter of minutes. "What do you want?" Zethrin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We want you to listen. Overlord, we want you to understand that your age of easy conquest is over. We want you to realize that you are no longer the apex predators of this universe." Captain Chun paused, letting the weight of her words sink in across the bridge of the eternal hunger. "And then, if you are wise, we want you to surrender." Overlord Zethrin stared at the tactical display, his mechanical mind struggling to process what he was seeing. His probe force, 5,000 of the most advanced warships in the known universe, was floating helplessly in space like debris from an ancient battle. Some ships were still firing randomly, their crews apparently unable to tell where they were or what they were supposed to be doing. "Surrender," he repeated slowly, as if the word was foreign to him. "The Valkyrie do not surrender. We have never surrendered. We are the apex predators of 17 galaxies." "Were," Captain Chun corrected gently. "You were the apex predators, but evolution never stops, Overlord. There's always something bigger, something smarter, something more adapted to survive. Today you discover what it feels like to be prey." Zethran's red sensor eyes flashed with anger. Centuries of absolute power and unchallenged dominance had not prepared him for this moment. The very concept of retreat or negotiation was alien. To Valkyrie thinking, they were conquerors. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. The idea that some collection of refugee survivors could threaten them was absurd. "You have disrupted communications with a single formation," he said, his voice returning to its usual commanding tone. "A clever trick, but ultimately meaningless. I still command 45,000 ships. Even without coordination, that is more than enough firepower to sterilize every world in this galaxy." "Is it?" Captain Chun asked. "Let me ask you something. Overlord, how many of your ships can function without constant communication with Fleet Command? How many of your captains have ever fought an independent battle without detailed orders from above?" The question struck home more than Zethran wanted to admit. The Valkyrie military was built around perfect coordination and overwhelming force. Individual ship commanders were trained to follow precise instructions from the command hierarchy. Independent thinking was discouraged because it led to tactical inconsistency. When you had millions of ships, you needed them all to act as one massive weapon, but that strength was also a weakness. Few Valkyrie captains had experience making decisions without orders. Most had never fought a battle where they could not communicate with their superiors or coordinate with neighboring ships. The probe force was proof of what happened when that coordination broke down. "Our captains are trained warriors," Zethran insisted. "They will adapt, will they? Let us find out." On the display, something new began to happen. The human ship, the tiny Defiance, started moving toward the confused probe force. It accelerated smoothly, its course taking it directly into the middle of the chaotic formation. Zethran watched with growing amazement as the small vessel approached. His warships without any apparent fear. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "We are going to give you a demonstration," Captain Chun replied calmly. "We want to show you what happens when superior numbers meet superior tactics." The Defiance was now within weapons range of the nearest Valkyrie ships. Those vessels should have immediately opened fire, vaporizing the small human craft in seconds. Valkyrie weapons were designed to destroy targets much larger and more heavily armored than the approaching ship. Instead, the Valkyrie ships did nothing. Their crews were still struggling with communication failures and contradictory orders. Some tried to target the Defiance, but their weapon systems received conflicting data about friend and foe identification. Others attempted to contact Fleet Command for instructions, but got only static and confusion. The Defiance moved through the formation like a hunter among sheep. As it passed each Valkyrie ship, something strange happened. Precise energy beams lanced out from the human vessel, striking critical systems with surgical accuracy. The beams were not powerful enough to destroy the massive alien warships, but they did not need to be. "Impossible," Zethran whispered as he watched ship after ship go dark. "Our armor should deflect such weak weapons." "Your armor is designed to stop the weapons you understand," Captain Chun explained. "Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion warheads. But we are not using any of those things. The hegemony of Tau Ceti developed these weapons before you conquered them. Weapons that target the quantum foundations of matter itself. Your armor cannot stop something that attacks the basic structure of reality." Ship after ship fell silent. As the Defiance continued its impossible attack run, the human vessel moved with perfect precision, never staying in one place long enough for the confused Valkyrie crews to target it effectively. Its weapons struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling Power systems, weapons arrays, and life support with surgical strikes. What made it even more disturbing was how easy it looked. The Defiance was not struggling or taking damage. It moved through the formation of 5,000 warships as if they were not even there. Each strike was calculated and precise. There was no wasted effort, no random destruction. The human ship knew exactly where to hit each target to achieve maximum effect. "How do you know our weak points?" Zethrin asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The collective of Rigel spent 40 years analyzing the wreckage of their destroyed fleet, Captain Chun replied. They mapped every structural weakness in Valkyrie ship design. The Void Walkers of the Magellanic Clouds contributed gravitational analysis of your hull materials. The machine minds of Proxima shared computational models of your power distribution systems. Each name represented another species that should have been completely destroyed. Another civilization that had somehow escaped and spent decades preparing for revenge. The scope of the intelligence failure was staggering. How many other survivor groups were out there? How much did they know? Every species you conquered taught us something new about how to hurt you, Captain Chun continued. Every battle you won gave us more data to analyze. Every world you destroyed created more survivors with motivation to see you fall. The Defiance had now disabled over half the probe force. The remaining ships were trying to reorganize, but without communications they could not coordinate their efforts. Some attempted to ram the human vessel, but it was too fast and maneuverable. Others tried to retreat, but found their navigation systems compromised by the same interference that had disrupted their communications. "This is impossible," Zethrin repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. He was watching the impossible happen before his eyes. A single small ship was systematically destroying a formation that could have conquered entire star systems. "What you are seeing," Captain Chun explained, "is the result of 300 years of preparation. Every survivor species contributed something to this moment. Knowledge, technology, tactics, intelligence. We have studied you longer and more carefully than you have ever studied any enemy." The last of the probe force ships went dark. 5,000 vessels, each one capable of destroying planets, had been disabled by a single ship no larger than a Valkyrie scout vessel. The debris field that had once been a proud military formation now drifted silently through space, their crews trapped aboard powerless hulks. "Surrender now," Captain Chun said, "and we will allow your crews to evacuate safely. We have no interest in unnecessary killing. We simply want your empire to stop expanding." Zethrin felt something he had never experienced before, genuine fear. Not fear of death, which was a concept all warriors understood, but fear of obsolescence. Fear that everything he had believed about very superiority was wrong. Fear that his species was not the apex predator he had always assumed. "You have disabled one small formation," he said, trying to project confidence he did not feel. "But I still have 45,000 ships. Even if you can repeat this trick, you cannot fight my entire fleet. Can we not?" "Computer, begin tactical." Demonstration sequence 2. The main display changed, showing the positions of the entire Valkyrie fleet. 45,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, ready to advance into the galaxy and begin the conquest. It was an impressive sight, a demonstration of raw military power that had intimidated countless civilizations. Then new contacts began appearing on the display. Ships decloaking throughout the region, appearing in positions that should have been impossible to reach undetected. But these were not the hundreds of vessels from the original coalition fleet. These were thousands upon thousands of new contacts, representing ship designs and technologies from across the galaxy. "What you are seeing," Captain Chun explained, "is the result of over a century of hidden construction. The architects did not just build a few secret bases. They built an entire shadow navy using technologies and designs from every species you have ever conquered." The numbers were staggering. Tens of thousands of ships were now visible, and more were appearing every second. Each one represented a different approach to space warfare, a unique technological evolution that had been preserved by survivors and refugees. Crystal ships that could phase in and out of normal space, biological vessels that could regenerate damage in real time, mechanical constructs that operated without crews, controlled by artificial minds that thought faster than organic brains. Impossible, Zethran breathed. The industrial capacity required to build such a fleet. It would take thousands of years. It did take thousands of years, Captain Chun replied. Work began the day the first species escaped your conquest. Every generation of survivors added to the project. Every refugee carried knowledge and technology to the hidden shipyards. This fleet represents the combined efforts of every civilization you have destroyed. The tactical display was now showing enemy contacts that outnumbered the Valkyrie fleet by 3 to 1. Over 100,000 ships arranged in formations that surrounded Zethran's forces completely. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful just minutes ago, was now trapped in the middle of a much larger enemy force. You cannot have built so many ships without us detecting them, Zethran protested. The phantom builders of Andromeda taught us their secrets of dimensional construction, Captain Chun explained patiently. Ships built in folded space, invisible to normal sensors until activated. The Timekeeper civilization contributed temporal manipulation technology that allowed construction to happen faster than normal time. The living ships of the verdant worlds grew vessels that registered as asteroids on most scanning systems. Each explanation made the situation worse. Not only was his fleet outnumbered, but the enemy had technologies that the Valkyrie had never encountered. Weapons and defenses developed specifically to counter everything the Empire had learned over 1,000,000 years of conquest. Even with superior numbers, Zethran said desperately, you lack our experience. We have conquered 17 galaxies. We know how to fight. Do you? When was the last time you fought against an enemy that could match your technology? When was the last time you faced opposition that understood your tactics? You have become excellent at destroying helpless civilizations, Overlord. But you have forgotten how to fight against equals. As if to prove her point, the enemy fleet began to move. But they did not advance in the chaotic rush that most species used when attacking. Instead, they moved with the same perfect coordination. That had always been the Valkyrie's greatest advantage. Different ship types supported each other seamlessly. Formations shifted and adapted in real time to counter any defensive moves the Valkyrie might attempt. Impossible, Zethran whispered for the 4th time. Only we have that level of coordination. You taught it to us, Captain Chun replied. Every battle you fought showed us how to move fleets effectively. Every conquest demonstrated the importance of coordination and mutual support. We watched you destroy galaxy after galaxy, and we learned from every mistake our predecessors made. The enemy fleet was now moving into attack position. Weapons were powering up across thousands of ships, each one designed to exploit different weaknesses in Valkyrie defenses. It was clear that this was not going to be the usual one-sided slaughter that Zethran was accustomed to. This was going to be a real battle against an enemy that knew how to fight. Last chance, Overlord, Captain Chun said. Order your fleet to power down weapons and prepare for evacuation. We will allow you to leave this galaxy unharmed if you agree to end your expansion permanently. Zethran looked at the tactical display, at the impossible fleet that surrounded his forces, at the small human ship that had single-handedly destroyed 5,000 of his best vessels. For the first time in his long life, he faced a choice that every species he had conquered had faced: fight against impossible odds, or surrender and hope for mercy. The apex predator had become the prey. Overlord Zethran stood in the command center of the Eternal Hunger, staring at the tactical display that showed his doom. 100,000 enemy ships surrounded his fleet like predators circling wounded prey. For the first time in over 1,000,000 years, a Valkyrie force was completely outmatched and trapped with no hope of victory. The bridge was silent except for the quiet hum of machinery and the nervous breathing of his crew. Every officer watched their commander, waiting for orders that would either save them or lead them to glorious destruction. But Zethran found himself unable to speak. The concepts of retreat and surrender were so foreign to Valkyrie thinking that he had no words for what he was feeling. "Overlord," his second-in-command whispered urgently, "we must respond. The enemy fleet is moving into final attack position." Zethran looked at her, seeing his own confusion reflected in her enhanced eyes. She had served under him for 3 centuries, had watched him conquer dozens of worlds with casual efficiency. Now she was asking him to make a decision that no Valkyrie commander had ever faced, whether to fight a battle they could not win. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. "The enemy fleet will be in optimal firing position in approximately 6 minutes, the tactical officer reported. "Their weapons appear to be fully charged and ready. 6 minutes to decide the fate of 50,000 ships and their crews. 6 minutes to choose between certain death and impossible surrender." Zethran had made thousands of tactical decisions over his long career, but none of them had ever felt like this. "Open the communication channel," he ordered. Captain Chun's voice came through clearly, still calm and patient despite commanding the largest military force in galactic history. "Yes, Overlord?" "If we surrender," Zethran said slowly, "what happens to my crews?" "They will be safely evacuated to neutral worlds where they can live peacefully. We have no interest in revenge against individual soldiers. Our quarrel is with your empire's expansion, not with the people who serve it. And my ships will be disabled and studied. The technologies will be shared with the coalition species to help defend against future Valkyrie aggression. Your weapons will be removed, but the vessels themselves will not be destroyed unnecessarily." Zethran considered this. In the Valkyrie Empire, defeated enemies were usually harvested completely. Their populations were processed into raw materials. Their worlds were stripped of resources, and their technologies were absorbed into the war machine. The idea that an enemy might show mercy to defeated foes was almost incomprehensible. "Why?" he asked. "Why offer mercy to those who have shown you none?" "Because we are not you," Captain Chun replied simply. "We remember what it was like to be the helpless victims. We remember the fear and desperation of watching our worlds burn. We do not want to become the thing we fought against." The answer was so alien to Valkyrie thinking that Zethran almost could not process it. In his understanding, the strong took what they wanted from the weak. That was the natural order of the universe. The idea that power could be used with restraint was a foreign concept. "You could destroy us completely," he said. "Why give us the chance to regroup and return?" "Because we are not offering you the chance to return?" Captain Chin's voice hardened slightly. "This is not a temporary truce, Overlord. This is the end of Valkyrie expansion, forever." "Explain." "What you are facing here is just the beginning. This coalition fleet represents survivors from only the most recent conquests. But word of our success here will spread throughout your empire. Every species you have ever conquered, every world you have ever harvested, will learn that the Valkyrie can be defeated." The tactical display changed, showing a map of the entire known galaxy. Red indicators marked Valkyrie territory, covering vast regions of space. But as Zethran watched, new contacts began appearing throughout those regions. Small fleets, hidden bases, resistance cells that had remained secret for centuries. "We have been preparing for this moment for 300 years, Captain Chun continued. "Not just here, but everywhere. In every galaxy you control, survivors have been building ships, gathering weapons, and waiting for the signal that resistance was possible." More contacts appeared on the display. Fleets emerging from hidden asteroid bases. Ships decloaking near major Valkyrie installations. Weapons platforms activating around conquered worlds. The scope of the coordinated uprising was staggering. "This is impossible," Zethran breathed. "Our intelligence networks would have detected such widespread organization." "Your intelligence networks were designed to find external threats, Captain," Hyun replied. "But we were never external to your empire. We lived within it, hiding among the populations you thought you had completely controlled. The children and grandchildren of refugees, passing down knowledge and waiting for their chance. Zethran realized the true scope of what he was seeing. This was not just a military defeat. This was the collapse of everything the Velkari Empire had built. 17 galaxies worth of conquered territory was simultaneously erupting in coordinated rebellion. You cannot control such vast territories with rebel fleets harassing your supply lines, Captain Chun explained. You cannot maintain order when every world might hide resistance fighters. You cannot expand when you must use all your forces just to hold what you already have. Even if this rebellion succeeds temporarily, Zethran said desperately, the Velkari Empire has millions of ships. Eventually, we will crush these uprisings and restore order. Will you? Let me show you something else. The display changed again, this time showing detailed intelligence about Velkari military assets throughout the Empire. Fleet positions, base, locations, supply routes, command structures. The level of detail was incredible, showing information that should have been classified at the highest levels. We know where every major Velkari fleet is located, Captain Chun said. We know your supply requirements, your maintenance schedules, your patrol routes. We have been watching and learning for centuries. When this battle ends, that information will be transmitted to resistance cells throughout your empire. Impossible. Such intelligence would require agents at the highest levels of command. It would, and we have them. The words hit Zethran like a physical blow. Agents within the Velkari command structure. Spies who had access to the most sensitive military information. The idea that the Empire had been infiltrated so completely was terrifying. Who? He demanded. Does it matter? The point is that your empire is not as secure as you believed. Your information is not as protected as you thought. Your enemies know you better than you know yourselves. Zethran felt his worldview crumbling around him. Everything he had believed about Vare superiority was being systematically destroyed. They were not the apex predators. They were not invincible. They were not even particularly well informed about their own empire. Time remaining, 2 minutes. The tactical officer announced quietly, 2 minutes to make the most important decision in Velkari history. Zethran looked around the bridge at his crew, seeing the fear and confusion in their enhanced faces. They had served the Empire faithfully, following orders and conquering worlds because that was what Velkari did. They did not deserve to die for the failures of their leadership. If I surrender, he said slowly, will you guarantee the safety of my crews? I will, Captain Chun replied immediately, and if I refuse? Then this battle will begin, and it will end with the complete destruction of your fleet. You have seen what one ship can do against 5,000. What do you think 100,000 ships will do against 45,000? Zethran closed his enhanced eyes and made his choice. All ships, he broadcast on the fleet-wide communication channel. This is Overlord Zethran. Power down all weapon systems and prepare for evacuation procedures. We are surrendering to the enemy. Fleet. The words felt strange in his mouth. No Velkari commander had ever spoken them before. But as he watched his ships comply with the order, powering down their weapons and opening their airlocks for evacuation, he felt something unexpected, relief. The battle that would have killed thousands of beings on both sides would not happen. His crews would live to see their families again. The cycle of endless conquest and destruction was finally being broken. Surrender confirmed, Captain Chun announced. Evacuation ships are en route to collect your crews. They will be treated with dignity and respect. Over the next several hours, Zethran watched as his entire fleet was systematically evacuated. Coalition ships arrived to collect Velkari personnel, who were transported to neutral worlds where they could begin new lives away from the Empire's military structure. The massive warships that had once terrorized galaxies sat empty and powerless, their weapons removed and their systems disabled. Finally, only the command crew of the Eternal Hunger remained. Zethran stood alone on his bridge, looking out at the coalition fleet that had defeated him so completely. A human shuttle was approaching to collect him and his remaining officers. Overlord, Captain Chun's voice came through the communication. System one last time. Before you go, I want you to understand something. This was never about destroying the Valkyrie people. This was about stopping the Valkyrie Empire. Your species can have a future, but it will be a different future than the one you planned. What happens now? Zethran asked. Now the galaxy begins to heal. Worlds that were harvested will be restored. Species that were scattered will be reunited. The survivors of your conquests will rebuild their civilizations in peace. And the Valkyrie will learn to live as equals instead of masters. It will not be easy, but it is possible. We have seen other species make the transition from conquerors to citizens. The human shuttle docked with the Eternal Hunger, and Zethran prepared to leave his ship for the last time. As he walked toward the airlock, he paused and looked back. At the bridge where he had commanded the destruction of so many worlds. Captain Chun, he said quietly, double quote. Yes, Overlord? How did you know? How did humans become the ones to organize all of this? There was a long pause before she answered. Because we had something the other species did not. We had time to prepare, and we had a reason to succeed. You see, Overlord, you never actually conquered Earth, you only thought you did. Zethran felt a chill run through his enhanced body. What do you mean? The Valkyrie Empire has records of conquering a species called humans over 200 years ago. Small blue world, primitive technology, quickly harvested and forgotten. But those records are wrong. What you conquered was not our homeworld. It was a colony we had evacuated specifically to serve as bait. The implications hit him like a physical blow. The Valkyrie had been manipulated from the very beginning. Humans had deliberately sacrificed one world to make the Empire believe they were extinct, buying time to prepare for this moment. We have been planning this for over 2 centuries, Captain Chun continued. Watching you, learning from you, preparing for the day when we would be strong enough to stop you. Everything that happened here today was designed and planned by humans who never forgot what you did to our colony. As Zethran stepped aboard the human shuttle, he realized that he had been defeated not just by superior numbers or better technology, but by something the Valkyrie had never truly understood. The power of patience and long-term planning. The shuttle pulled away from the Eternal Hunger, carrying him toward an uncertain future. Behind them, the Coalition fleet began its work of liberation, spreading throughout Valkyrie, space to free the populations that had been enslaved for so long. The age of Valkyrie dominance was over. The age of freedom had begun, and at the center of it all, the small blue world called Earth continued its orbit around an ordinary yellow star, its people finally able to sleep peacefully knowing that the great destroyers would never threaten anyone again. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum that echoed through the crystalline walls. 5 beings walked through the entrance, each one representing the most powerful military forces in the known galaxy. Their footsteps clicked and scraped against the polished floor as they made their way to the circular table at the center of the room. The chamber itself was a wonder to see. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing star maps and fleet positions across thousands of worlds. The ceiling stretched high above them, decorated with the symbols of the 5 great empires. Everything in this room spoke of power, technology, and control over the galaxy. Admiral Zixthara of the Zephyrian hegemony was the first to take her seat. Her insect-like body gleamed under the chamber lights. Her forearms moved with quick, sharp motions as she activated her personal data display. Her compound eyes reflected the blue glow from the walls as she looked around the table. The Zephyrians had ruled the eastern spiral arm for over 3,000 years. Their biomechanical ships could heal themselves in battle, growing new armor and weapons as they fought. General Gorthik the Render followed behind her. The massive reptilian warrior had to duck slightly to fit through the doorway. His thick scales were scarred from countless battles, and his yellow eyes gleamed with the hunger for war. The Korthic Empire controlled the savage outer rim worlds where only the strongest survived. Their ships were not built but grown, living creatures bred specifically for combat. Each vessel had teeth, claws, and the ability to bite through enemy. Hulls. Commander Velturis of the Valdris Confederation floated into the room next. His body was made of pure energy contained within a shimmering force field. Blue and white light danced around his form as he moved. The Valdris had evolved beyond physical matter centuries ago. Their ships were constructed from plasma and light itself, able to phase through solid objects and strike without warning. Their weapons could melt entire asteroids in seconds. The Morvian collective entered as one, though their representative appeared to be a single being. Node leader Kessara looked like a tall, pale humanoid, but she was connected to billions of other Morvian minds across the galaxy. Her black eyes showed no individual thought, only the collective will of her entire species. The Morvians built modular ships that could combine and separate at will. 1,000 small vessels could become one massive battle station in minutes. Finally, strategist Thander of the Veshan Dominion took his place at the table. The ancient being moved slowly, his gray skin marked with glowing tattoos that pulsed with each heartbeat. The Veshans were the oldest spacefaring race in the galaxy. Their ships were powered by controlled black holes, and their weapons could bend space and time itself. They had been conquering worlds when the other races were still learning to make fire. Zixtara's mandibles clicked together as she began the meeting. Welcome, fellow rulers of the galaxy. Today we discuss the final expansion of our territories. The last unclaimed sectors await our fleets. Her voice had a buzzing quality that made the other beings shift uncomfortably. Gorthak slammed his clawed fist on the table, leaving deep scratches in the metal surface. Enough talk, show us these new hunting grounds. My war beasts grow restless without fresh prey to devour. Saliva dripped from his fangs as he spoke. Veltura's energy form flickered with amusement. Patience, primitive one. Let us see what worlds are worth claiming. Light swirled around his hands as he activated the main holographic display. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared above the table. Most of it was colored in the 5 shades representing each empire. Only a small section near the edge remained white, unclaimed by any of the great powers. Node-leader Shesara spoke with the voice of billions. The collective observed 17 star systems in this region. Most contain primitive species not yet capable of faster-than-light travel. They pose no threat to our expansion. Thander's ancient eyes studied the display carefully. Interesting. These worlds have been ignored for good reason. They are far from major trade routes and contain limited resources. Why do we concern ourselves with such insignificant territory? Zixtara's compound eyes glittered. Because, Old One, even the smallest unclaimed space represents a challenge to our authority. These systems contain over 30 billion primitive beings. That is 30 billion potential slaves for our empires. The holographic display zoomed in on one particular star system. A yellow star with several planets orbited peacefully, unaware of the 5 predators planning their destruction. The third planet from the star showed green and blue colors, indicating a world full of life. This system is called Sol, Zixtara continued. The dominant species calls itself human. They achieved primitive spaceflight only 200 years ago and developed faster-than-light travel just 50 years past. Their technology is laughably simple compared to ours. Gorthik leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the table. What weapons do these humans possess? Can they provide sport for my warriors? The Zephyrian admiral's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. They use crude chemical explosives and primitive energy weapons. Their ships are made of simple metal alloys. A single one of our bioships could destroy their entire fleet without sustaining damage. Veltura's pulsed brighter with excitement. Their energy output is minimal. Our plasma cannons generate more power in 1 second than their entire civilization uses in a year. It would be like crushing insects beneath our feet. The Morvian representative tilted her head as if listening to distant voices. The collective has observed their communication networks. They are divided into hundreds of separate nations that constantly fight among themselves. They cannot unite even to defend their own world. Thander stroked his chin thoughtfully. Still, we should not dismiss any species entirely. Even the weakest prey can surprise a careless predator. Gorthik roared with laughter, a sound that made the crystal walls vibrate. You grow soft in your old age, Theshan. These mammals have no fangs, no claws, no natural weapons. They are prey animals pretending to be hunters? The holographic display shifted to show images of human technology. Primitive rockets, basic energy shields, and simple projectile weapons appeared in the air above them. Compared to the advanced systems of the Five Empires, human technology looked like stone tools. Zixthara gestured toward the images with one of her 4 arms. Observe their so-called warships. Metal boxes with chemical thrusters and kinetic weapons. They cannot even generate a proper energy shield. Our bioships heal faster than their weapons can cause damage. Another image appeared showing a human space station. The structure was clearly built from separate modules connected together, a far cry from the seamless biomechanical constructions of the Zephians or the living vessels of the Korthek. Look at this pathetic attempt at space construction, Velterus said, his energy form flickering with disdain. Crude welds, exposed conduits, inefficient design. Our ships are works of art compared to this scrap metal. Node leader Kessaraz's black eyes reflected the holographic light. The collective estimates complete conquest of human space within 30 standard days. Their divided nature makes them incapable of coordinated resistance. Thander studied the human technology with the patience that came from millennia of experience. Their designs do show a certain practicality, simple but functional. Perhaps there is something to be learned from such efficiency. The other 4 representatives turned to stare at him. Gorthik's yellow eyes narrowed dangerously. You suggest we learn from prey animals? Have you lost your mind along with your strength, old one? The Theshan strategist raised one hand calmly. I merely observe that survival often requires adaptation. These humans have survived and expanded despite their limitations. That suggests a certain resourcefulness. Zixthara's mandibles clicked impatiently. Resourcefulness means nothing against superior firepower. One Zephyrium bioship carries more weapons than their entire planetary defense grid. We could conquer their homeworld with a single vessel. The holographic display showed a new image, human soldiers in combat armor. Their equipment looked primitive compared to the advanced battlesuits of the 5 empires. Simple projectile weapons, basic protective gear, and crude communication devices. Gorthik examined the human warriors with a predator's eye. Weak creatures hiding behind metal shells. My Korthak warriors fight with fang and claw. These humans would break like twigs in close combat. Velterus pulsed with amusement. They still use solid projectiles as weapons. Our energy shields can deflect such primitive attacks without effort. It would be like fighting with throwing stones. The Morvian representative tilted her head again, listening to the collective consciousness. Analysis complete. Human military doctrine relies on individual heroics rather than coordinated tactics. They lack the unity necessary for effective large-scale warfare. Thander continued to study the images carefully. Something about the human designs bothered him, though he could not identify what. Their technology was clearly inferior, but there was an underlying logic to their approach that suggested deeper thinking. Perhaps we should consider dividing their territory between our empires, Zixthara suggested. The conquest will be so simple that we might as well make it profitable for all of us. The other representatives considered this proposal. The human systems were not particularly valuable, but conquering them would demonstrate the power of the 5 empires to the rest of the galaxy. Gorthik's scarred face twisted into a grin that showed rows of sharp teeth. I claim the right to attack their homeworld first. My war beasts need fresh blood to taste. The collective objects, Node Leader Kassara stated flatly. Morvian forces are better suited for planetary conquest. We will swarm their defenses. With superior numbers, Valtyrus flickered brighter. Both of your approaches are too crude. Valdris plasma weapons can sterilize their worlds from a safe distance. Clean, efficient, artistic? Zixthara's compound eyes shifted to look at each of her rivals. The hegemony has the strongest claim to this territory. Our bioships are already patrolling the border regions. We discovered these humans first. The five beings began to argue among themselves, each claiming the right to destroy humanity. Their voices rose as they debated who had the strongest military, the best weapons, and the most legitimate claim to conquest. Finally, Thander raised his hand for silence. The ancient Theshan's voice carried the weight of millennia when he spoke. We waste time with petty squabbles. Let us each take a portion of human space. There are enough worlds for all five empires. To claim territory, the others considered this wisdom. Sharing the conquest would prevent conflict between the allies and still demonstrate their collective power. Zixthara activated the star map again. Very well. We shall divide their systems equally. Each empire will claim 6 star systems, and we will assault their territory simultaneously. The humans will face the combined might of the galaxy's greatest powers. The meeting concluded with the 5 representatives planning their attack routes and choosing their target systems. They discussed logistics, supply lines, and the placement of occupation forces after the conquest. Not once did any of them consider the possibility that the humans might resist successfully. As the beings prepared to leave the chamber, Thander lingered to study the human technology one final time. Something about their simple, practical designs continued to trouble him. But he dismissed his concerns as the caution of old age and followed the others toward the exit. The great doors closed behind them with a final echo through the crystal walls. The holographic displays faded to darkness, leaving only the soft blue glow of the living walls. In 30 days, 5 massive fleets would converge on human space, confident in their technological superiority and certain of easy victory. None of them realized they were about to encounter something their advanced civilizations had forgotten how to do, learn from their enemies. 3 weeks after the meeting in the Galactic Council chamber, the first alien scout ships began appearing at the edges of human space. The Zephyrium bioships emerged from faster-than-light travel like living nightmares, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Korthik war beasts dropped out of hyperspace with roars that could be heard through the vacuum of space itself. Valdris plasma vessels materialized as balls of contained starfire. Morvian scout formations appeared in perfect geometric patterns. Theshan singularity ships bent space around them as they arrived. The aliens expected to find panicked human vessels fleeing in terror. Instead, they discovered something they had not anticipated. The humans were ready for them. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the sensor displays with calm eyes. Her ship was one of 12 human vessels patrolling the outer rim of the Sol system. When the first alien contacts appeared on her screens, she did not panic or call for immediate retreat. Instead, she activated her ship's recording systems and opened a communication channel to Earth. Command, this is Defiant. We have contact with unknown vessels. Beginning first contact protocols. Her voice was steady and professional. Behind her, the bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. The alien ships moved toward the human patrol with obvious confidence. The Zephyrian bioship was the first to engage. Its living hull rippled as weapon ports opened like blooming flowers. Streams of bioplasma shot toward the Defiant. Expecting to cripple the primitive human vessel with the first volley, Sarah's ship shuddered under the impact, but the shields held. Interesting, she said quietly to her tactical officer. Their weapons use organic compounds. Make sure you record the energy signatures and plasma composition. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Martinez, nodded as his fingers flew over his console. Recording everything, Captain. Their plasma has a distinctive bioelectric field pattern. Might be vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. The Zephyrian commander was surprised that the human ship survived the first attack. Through his bioship's organic communication system, he sent a message to the human vessel. Primitive mammals, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Your crude technology cannot stand against hegemony bioships. Sarah activated her external speakers. Unknown. Vessel, this is Captain Chun of the United Earthship Defiant. We are conducting peaceful exploration in this region. Please state your intentions. The alien commander's mandibles clicked with amusement. These humans actually thought they could negotiate. Our intentions are conquest, mammals. Your species will serve the hegemony or be eliminated. As the bioship prepared for another attack, Sarah made a decision that would save humanity. Instead of fighting to the death or fleeing in panic, she ordered a tactical withdrawal. But this was not the retreat of a beaten enemy. This was something far more dangerous. All stations, begin recording Protocol 7, Sarah commanded. I want detailed scans of their ship's biomechanical systems, weapon frequencies, and regeneration. Rates, Martinez, launch probe clusters along our retreat path. The Defiant began to pull back, but slowly and in good order. As the Zephyrian ship pursued, human sensors analyzed every aspect of its design. The probes released by the Defiant attached themselves to the alien vessel's hull like tiny metal parasites, transmitting data even as the bioship's immune systems tried to dissolve them. Lieutenant Martinez watched his displays with growing excitement. Captain, their regeneration systems show decreased efficiency when exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Also, their bioplasma weapons have a reload time of approximately 43 seconds between full power shots. Sarah nodded. Transmit all data to Fleet Command. Mark this as Priority Intelligence Package Alpha 1. The Zephyrian commander grew frustrated as the human ship continued its methodical retreat. He had expected either immediate surrender or a desperate last stand. Instead, these mammals were conducting what appeared to be a scientific study of his vessel. When he tried to close the distance for a killing blow, the human ship would accelerate just enough to stay out of range while continuing to scan his bio-ship. After 2 hours of this strange pursuit, Sarah received new orders from Earth. Defiant, this is Admiral Rivera. Break contact and return to base. You have gathered sufficient intelligence for Phase 1 analysis. The human ship suddenly accelerated to its maximum speed and disappeared into faster-than-light travel, leaving the confused Zephyrian commander alone in empty space. He had won the encounter, but something felt wrong about the entire situation. Similar scenes played out across human space as the 5 alien empires sent their scouts forward. Each time, human ships would engage briefly, record everything they could, and then withdraw in good order. The aliens began to notice patterns in human behavior that troubled them. General Gorthek received reports from his war beast commanders with growing confusion. The humans do not fight like prey, his chief lieutenant reported. They strike at specific points on our vessels, testing our defenses and recording our responses. When we pursue, they lead us through fields of sensor probes that analyze our bioships. The Gorthek general snarled as he studied the tactical reports. His war beasts were living creatures, and the humans seemed to be studying their biology. Like scientists examining laboratory specimens, they treat our sacred war beasts like animals in a zoo. This is an insult that demands blood vengeance. But when Gorthek's fleets tried to catch the human ships for a proper battle, they discovered something disturbing. The mammals were learning faster than seemed possible. In the first encounters, human weapons had been completely ineffective against Gorthek bio-armor. By the 5th engagement, human ships were using modified energy frequencies that actually caused pain to the war beasts. Commander Velturus of the Valdris received similar reports from his plasma ship captains. The humans have developed some kind of energy absorption technology, one captain reported. Their ships are now equipped with devices that can actually drain power from our plasma weapons during combat, the energy being flickered with annoyance. How had these primitive mammals learned to manipulate plasma fields in just 3 weeks of contact? His people had spent centuries perfecting their energy manipulation techniques. Yet the humans were already finding ways to counter them, Nogue leader. Kasara experienced something even more disturbing. During the third encounter between Morvian ships and human vessels, the collective consciousness felt something it had never experienced before. The human ships had somehow generated an interference pattern that actually disrupted the hive mind connection between Morvian vessels. Impossible, Kasara spoke to herself, her voice carrying the confusion of billions of linked minds. The collective has never been disrupted by external forces. How do these isolated individuals understand our group consciousness better than species who have studied us for millennia? The most troubling reports came to strategist Thander from his Singularity ship commanders. Ancient One, his fleet admiral reported, the humans have begun using gravitational sensors we did not know existed. They can detect our approach before we exit faster than light travel. Moreover, they have developed some kind of gravitational dampening technology that reduces the effectiveness of our space-time weapons. Thander sat in his meditation chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing all the encounter reports. His ancient mind processed the information with growing concern. These humans were not just surviving first contact with superior alien technology, they were learning from it. How long since first contact? He asked his aide. 21 standard days, Ancient One. And in 21 days, they have developed countermeasures for technologies that took us millennia to perfect? Thander's glowing tattoos pulsed with agitation. Something is not right about this species. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Marcus Rivera stood in the center of the United Earth Defense Command's war room. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing tactical data from hundreds of encounters with the 5 alien empires. His staff of analysts, scientists, and engineers worked frantically to process the intelligence gathered by the outer patrols. "Report," Rivera commanded, his gravelly voice cutting through the noise of activity. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the chief xenobiology specialist, stepped forward with a datapad. "Admiral, we've identified significant weaknesses in all 5 alien technologies. The Zephyrian bioships use electromagnetic signals to coordinate their regeneration. We can disrupt that with the right frequency modulation." Rivera nodded. "What about the Korthek?" "Their war beasts are living creatures with nervous systems. We've developed neural disruption fields that can cause disorientation and pain. We can also use pheromone scramblers to confuse their sensory systems." The Admiral turned to his chief physicist. "Dr. Park, what about the energy-based threats?" Dr. James Park consulted his tablet. "The Valdris plasma weapons rely on magnetic containment fields. We've designed field disruptors that can cause their weapons to overload. We're also working on energy absorption systems that can actually feed off their plasma discharges. The Morvians? Their hive mind uses quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication," Dr. Warren continued. "We found a way to generate quantum interference patterns that can sever their collective consciousness temporarily." Rivera's expression grew grim. "And the Deshans?" Dr. Park's face was pale. "Their singularity weapons are the most dangerous, but they're also the most unstable. We've identified gravitational resonance frequencies that can cause their black hole containment systems to fail catastrophically." The Admiral looked around the room at his team. "How long until we can implement these countermeasures fleet-wide?" 6 weeks for full implementation, his chief engineer reported. 2 weeks for basic systems on our primary defense vessels," Rivera calculated quickly in his head. "The aliens will reach the inner system in approximately 8 weeks based on their current advance rate. That gives us just enough time." He paused, studying the tactical displays. "But we need more intelligence. Continue the reconnaissance protocols. Every engagement must provide new data." Captain Chun received her new orders while the Defiant was docked at Luna Station for resupply. Her ship had been fitted with new sensor arrays and experimental weapon systems based on the intelligence she had gathered. As she prepared for another patrol mission, She reviewed the files on alien weaknesses that Earth's scientists had compiled. "This is incredible," Lieutenant Martinez said as he studied the tactical updates. 3 weeks ago, we didn't even know these aliens existed. Now we have detailed countermeasures for all their technologies." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained serious. "Don't get overconfident. We're still outnumbered and outgunned. These countermeasures will help, but we need to be smart about how we use them." The Defiant launched from Luna Station along with dozens of other human vessels, each one now equipped with weapons and defenses specifically designed to counter alien technologies. As they headed back toward the outer system, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in her species. Humanity might not have the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but they had something the aliens seemed to lack: the ability to learn and adapt. The aliens had expected to find primitive prey. Instead, they had encountered something far more dangerous, a species that could turn every encounter into a learning opportunity. With each engagement, humanity grew stronger while their enemies remained static in their arrogance. The real test would come when the alien fleets arrived in force. But thanks to the sacrifice and intelligence gathering of the outer patrols, humanity would be ready for them. The hunters were about to discover they had chosen the wrong prey. 8 weeks after first contact, the 5 alien fleets finally reached the edge of the Sol system. Each empire had brought their most powerful warships, confident that the conquest of humanity would be swift and decisive. Admiral Zixtara commanded 200 Zephyrian bioships, their living hulls pulsing with anticipation for battle. General Gorthek led 300 Korthik warbeasts, each one bred specifically for this campaign. Commander Veltris brought 150 Valdris plasma vessels that glowed like captured stars. Node leader Kessara directed 500 Morvian ships in perfect formation. Strategist Thander guided 100 Theshan dreadnoughts, their singularity drives bending space around them. The combined alien fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Over 1,200 vessels carrying enough firepower to destroy entire star systems moved toward Earth with unstoppable momentum. The alien commanders expected to find a desperate human defense scattered around their homeworld. Instead, they discovered something that made them pause in confusion. The entire Sol system had been transformed into a fortress. Captain Torres of the Zephyrian scout vessel was the first to report the strange sight to Admiral Zixtara. "Admiral, the human system is not what our intelligence predicted. Every asteroid in the belt has been modified. There are weapon platforms around each planet. The third planet's moon appears to be one massive gun emplacement. Zixtara's compound." Eyes studied the sensor readings with growing disbelief. In just 8 weeks, the humans had turned their peaceful star system into a military stronghold. Asteroid mining stations had been converted into missile platforms. Orbital factories around Mars were now producing weapons instead of consumer goods. Jupiter's moons bristled with defensive installations. How did they accomplish this so quickly? She asked her tactical officer. "Unknown, Admiral. Our bioships detect massive energy signatures throughout the system. They have been working continuously since our first contact." General Gorthek received similar reports from his warbeast scouts. The massive reptilian warrior slammed his fist against his command throne, leaving claw marks in the metal. "Impossible! Prey animals cannot build defenses this extensive in such a short time. Are these readings accurate?" His chief lieutenant, a scarred Korthik veteran, nodded grimly. "The humans have militarized their entire star system, General. Every space station, every orbital platform, every large asteroid has been weaponized. Our scouts count over 10,000 defensive positions." The Korthik general's yellow eyes narrowed with suspicion. 10,000 positions? That is more firepower than most species possess in their entire fleet. Something is wrong here. Commander Veltris studied the energy readings from his plasma ship's advanced sensors. The levels of activity in the human system were extraordinary. "These mammals have been working without rest," he reported to his fleet captains. "Every industrial facility in their system has been converted to military production. They are not acting like a prey species. Node leader Kessara felt the collective consciousness of the Morvians analyzing the human defenses. Billions of linked minds worked together to process the tactical data, but even their combined intelligence was puzzled by what they observed. The collective cannot understand human behavior, she announced to her fleet commanders. Prey species should scatter when faced with superior predators. Instead, these mammals have gathered all their strength in one location. This violates all known patterns of prey animal responses. Strategist Thander was the most troubled by the human preparations. His ancient mind had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, and something about the human response felt familiar yet different. They are not behaving like a primitive species, he told his fleet admiral. This level of rapid militarization suggests either extensive preparation or remarkable adaptability. The 5 alien fleets formed up at the outer edge of the Sol system, just beyond the orbit of the 9th planet. Their commanders opened a joint communication channel to coordinate their attack. Each empire had planned to claim specific human worlds for themselves, but the unexpected defenses required new strategies. Admiral Zixthara spoke first, her buzzing voice carrying across the communication link. The human defenses are more extensive than anticipated, but they remain primitive. Bioship regeneration will overcome any damage their crude weapons can inflict. General Gorthak's growl echoed through the channel. My war beasts hunger for combat. These static defenses cannot maneuver like living ships. We will bite through their metal shells and feast on the soft mammals inside. Commander Velteris pulsed with confidence. Their energy output is still minimal compared to our plasma weapons. We can overload their defensive systems with concentrated fire. Node leader Kessara reported the collective's analysis. Human defensive positions show poor coordination. Each platform operates independently without proper hive-mind integration. The collective will exploit this weakness. Strategist Thander remained silent, studying the human preparations with growing unease. Something about their defensive arrangement bothered him, though he could not identify the specific threat. The alien fleets began their advance into the Sol system, maintaining tight formation. They expected the humans to activate their defenses immediately, creating a massive battle around the outer planets. Instead, they encountered something completely unexpected. Silence. The human defensive platforms remained inactive as the alien fleets passed Jupiter's orbit. No missiles launched from the converted asteroids. No energy beams fired from the orbital stations. The entire human defense network seemed to be asleep. This is too easy, General Gorthak muttered, his predator instincts warning him of danger. Prey animals do not ignore approaching predators. Something is wrong. Admiral Zixthara was equally suspicious. Perhaps their weapons require closer range to be effective. Primitive technology often has limited range capabilities. As the alien fleets passed Mars, a few human defensive platforms did activate, but only to launch what appeared to be sensor probes. The small devices spread throughout the alien formations, scanning and recording but not attacking. Commander Velteris watched the probes with growing irritation. More of their intelligence-gathering tactics. These mammals seem obsessed with collecting data. The probes attach themselves to alien ships like metallic parasites, just as they had during the first contact encounters. But this time there were thousands of them, covering every vessel in the combined fleet. The aliens tried to destroy the probes with point defense weapons, but for every one they eliminated, 2 more took its place. Node leader Kessara felt the collective consciousness becoming agitated. These scanning devices are more sophisticated than expected. They are mapping our ships down to the molecular level. Within minutes, every alien vessel in the combined fleet had been thoroughly scanned by human probes. The devices recorded energy signatures, weapon configurations, shield frequencies, and even the biological patterns of living ships. All this data was transmitted back to Earth in real time? Strategist Thander finally understood what was happening. This is not a defensive strategy, he announced to the other commanders. This is a trap. Admiral Zixthara's mandibles clicked with impatience. Explain yourself, old one. How can scanning probes be a trap? They are not trying to stop us, Thander replied, his ancient voice heavy with concern. They are studying. Yes, every probe is gathering intelligence about our fleets. They want us to reach their homeworld. General Gorthek roared with laughter. Let them study us. What can prey animals learn that will help them against superior predators? My war beasts grow stronger with each passing moment. But Thander's warnings proved accurate as the alien fleets approached Earth's orbit. The human homeworld appeared to be completely defensible, surrounded by orbital platforms and defensive stations. The moon had been converted into a massive fortress, its surface covered with weapon emplacements and shield generators. Yet still the human defenses remained silent. Where are their ships? Commander Veltrus asked, his energy form flickering with confusion. Intelligence reports indicated they possessed a space fleet. Are they hiding behind their planet like cowards? The answer came from an unexpected source. Earth itself began to change. What the aliens had assumed were defensive platforms around the planet started to move. Massive structures that appeared to be orbital factories opened like flower petals, revealing hidden launch bays inside. The planet's surface showed new activity as underground installations opened their blast doors. Admiral Zixthara realized with growing horror that they had been completely wrong about human preparations. Those are not defensive platforms. Those, are shipyards. The human fleet emerged not from hidden positions in space, but from Earth itself. Hundreds of vessels launched from orbital facilities that had been disguised as civilian installations. Underground bases on the planet's surface revealed launch shafts that extended deep into the planet's core. The moon opened massive hangar doors that had been concealed beneath fake crater surfaces. Within minutes, the human